Hi Ben, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. So lovely to chat to you. How are you doing?
Hi, good, thank you. Good, thank you.
Um, well, maybe you could just kick off with a brief intro to Limbo. It's a very unique film. For someone who doesn't know anything about it, how would you describe a bit about what they can expect?
Um, okay, wait. I'm bad at this stuff. So, um, I mean, I think what to expect. I think it's like an unexpected take on a very serious and uh, no, I'm going to start again. Um, I think. What to expect. I mean, I suppose it's a in a nutshell, it's an absurdist, deadpan comedy about a group of asylum seekers that are sent to a remote Scottish island, and it centres around Omar, who's a talented Syrian musician, um, who's struggling to come to terms with his circumstances as a refugee.
Mm. And obviously you're from Scotland, but you've also spent time in the Middle East, I believe, with refugees, with migrants. So, what brought you to this story, and also what motivated you to want to tell it? Because I guess we hear a lot about migrants, but it's often stats and kind of provocative headlines in the papers. So, what made you want to get behind and show us some, of the humanity behind it, if you like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that kind of has been, I've been interested in the subject matter for um, a really long time. It kind of goes back 10 plus years to the point that um, I was studying Arabic and politics, and I spent time living in Syria and studying at Damascus University as part of that, and then ended up working in refugee camps with an NGO and staying with a family in the camps. And it's just been a subject that I'm kind of really interested in, really passionate about, and had this sort of massive desire to make a film about that really sort of does something different and sort of looks beyond the numbers and statistics, as you say, and sort of looks beyond the sensationalist elements of the subject, and kind of tries to humanize the refugee experience, and really kind of make a sort of film about refugees that isn't about refugees. It's just about people, like all of us, and that we can relate to these characters on screen, no matter what our background is.
Mm. And I think one of the first questions as well needs to be about the style and about the rhythm and the humor, because it feels very British in that deadpan kind of absurdist. Some of it's quite physical, quite visual. Um, were you inspired by other filmmakers in terms of that style, and even kind of like the long silences and some of the still camera shots, or was that something that you just felt like, was it just a really unique way to deal with this subject matter?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's sort of very, I think, sort of integral to my sort of stylistic sensibilities and my voice as a filmmaker and the kind of films that I want to make. I mean, influence-wise, that I probably have to credit Elia Suleiman, the Palestinian director. That sort of goes way back to my undergrad, before I went into filmmaking, and I remember seeing his film The Time That Remains, and I was just really sort of struck by the style of his filmmaking, but it sort of changed my understanding of what cinema could be. But it's something that I can't really avoid. I have to say, it's something that, as a writer director, it's the way that I see the film and see the scenes play out as I'm writing. So yeah.
And what do you think the effect of treating the subject in that manner is? Because there's some really sort of cutting bits in the script. I don't know, like the parents saying, is it like Guantanamo? And of course it isn't, but it's its own kind of slow burn torture. Or, like in the supermarket, having to be educated about racist terms and things like that. So underneath that humor, you're really hitting on some almost the absurdity often for people who come to this country and the situations they're put in. But the humor allows us to access it in a way you might not be able to if it was more on the nose.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely it. I think it's, I think humor is a great way to access, this subject matter in a different way. And I think that, it's a very kind of it's part of the sort of human condition to sort of find humor in moments of tragedy. And so even though it's absurdist, it's also kind of quite natural to do that, and to look at the subject matter of humor, because yeah, it's there is so much kind of absurdism around this subject matter. A lot of the sort of scenes where there is humor, the cultural assimilation classes, for example, these are based on reality. So it's actually kind of looking at sort of the response from the West, and the sort of attitudes of the Western characters, where a lot of that humor lies as well. So we're kind of always on the side of the refugees.
And can you talk a little bit about the location? Because I feel like it's almost another character in the collection of characters you have in the film, both in terms of why it was really crucial, and maybe some of the challenges of filming there, and the way you use it. It can simultaneously look very bleak but also incredibly beautiful, which sort of seems at some points kind of representing how he feels, quite kind of ambivalent about his situation.
Yeah, I mean, in the creative process, the island quite quickly became this sort of metaphor for purgatory in itself. So, and that's the thing. So it is a fictional Scottish island, and 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 it sort of really speaks to this sort of metaphorical underlay of these characters being caught in limbo, and the elements on the island, I suppose, sort of they really help to sort of create the language underneath the film, and the language of Omar's emotional journey, and going through, obviously the wind and the rain and all of these things that, and then that sort of passage of time and the change of the seasons, and they help to sort of create this feeling of Omar being trapped in limbo, and this sort of turmoil that's within him. In terms of shooting there, we shot on a real remote Scottish island, and it was a nightmare. The elements and the weather that we see in the film, all of that is real. It is a real remote island, and it was incredibly difficult. We were constantly battling against the elements and constantly battling against kind of nature, to make this film work. But at the same time, we were all there, and we all worked together, and all of these things, I think, fed into the performances, and fed into the sort of spirit of making this film.
And you've got a fantastic cast. We were saying, like all these kind of misfit characters you've got, and they all bounce off each other. But particularly Amir, what an incredible central performance. I think it's interesting, when Farhad is saying, it's all in the eyes. He conveys so much with his eyes, even though, a lot of the time, he doesn't have so much dialogue. So was he really crucial? And what about the rest of the cast as well?
Yeah, I mean, Amir, he's such a huge talent, and I think it's really incredible what he did in this film. A lot of this film is about emotional containment. As you say, he has to communicate so much with just his eyes or with his face, but also through quite kind of minimal expression, and minimal dialogue. So, he carried he was really, during the shoot, carrying the sort of the emotional weight of what Omar was going through, and that was really incredible to see. He's quite different, off screen, so you could really see him being sort of worn down, during the shoot, and it was amazing. The other characters as well, everyone, it's just, we were very fortunate to have such a brilliant cast, and I think they're all just brilliantly talented, so committed to the roles, and everyone put so much work into it, and we were all sort of trapped on this island together as well, so there was a kind of good camaraderie between everyone, and so it was great.
And what do you hope that people will take away from the film? Because I guess it does shine a spotlight on the plight of people that are just left to wait sort of indefinitely, in a way, but also some of the issues of racism and how we treat foreigners that come to the country. If you think of what's happened in the wake of the Euros, it's an issue that is very much alive and well in this country. So what do you think a film like this can do in terms of making us rethink the way things are in this country right now, and how people might behave differently in future, hopefully?
I mean, I think it's you mentioned in the wake of the World Cup final. I think it's so incredibly disturbing that these things still exist, and I think it's very difficult to know how to sort of break that cycle. It's 2021, and these attitudes still exist. I think what I wanted to do with the film is spotlight this subject matter, and bring people into the cinema, or to watch it at home, and spend an hour and a half, an hour and 40 minutes with these characters, and to look up to these characters on screen and find parts of themselves in them. So if that works, then that would be great. I think that there's a lot of division in the world, and we are more similar than we are different, and hopefully this film speaks to that.
And do you have any strong feelings about what should change, perhaps in like a political sense? I mean, it feels like the hostile environment is only getting more hostile, criminalizing people that help migrants and so on and so forth. So do you have optimism for the future? And if so, if not, what do you think needs to change?
I mean, I think one of the crazy things is that, this started out as a absurdist concept, a group of asylum seekers that are sent to a remote Scottish island. And now that's, something that's actually being suggested by Priti Patel, by the government. It's, I think, unfortunately, part of these proposals and where they come from is this sort of process of dehumanization, othering, that refugees have been experiencing for a very long time. It's easy for a government to create policies like that because they're dehumanizing refugees. So I think the more that we can do to work against that, to spotlight the subject matter, to kind of humanize the refugee experience, and then hopefully it can have a positive effect, but it's extremely difficult. It's such a huge issue, and it's extremely difficult. I think the government are trying to essentially make seeking asylum illegal, or that was the initial proposal, which goes against human rights law, and now they've changed it to kind of knowingly seek asylum with that. So it's very difficult. It's a very difficult situation, but I think it's trying to humanize the refugee experience, try and show people that they are just human beings. They're people like us, and they are met with very unfortunate circumstances, and are forced to leave their homes. But we'll we'll see. Yeah, an election would be nice.
Well, thank you so much. I'm out of time. It was so lovely to chat to you, and thanks so much, for this incredible film, which I think does change people's views. Hopefully, let's see. Lovely to chat to you. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks
Bye.
a lot. Cheers. Bye. Bye. Thanks.